They say that islanders have salt water in our veins.
Get away to a place where the sunrises are incredible, to a place of quaint beauty and unmistakable.
Galveston is an island off the coast of Texas. 37 miles all the way around. Sunshine, palm trees. What could be better than living on an island? We're set aside from the rest of the world.
Good evening, I'm Ann Curry in for Brian Williams with a special Western edition of NBC Nightly News. At this hour, the eye of Hurricane Ike is moving toward major population areas along the Gulf Coast. Officials describe Lake today as potentially catastrophic. This storm touched land hours earlier than predicted.
I'm Leon Phillips II, born and raised in Galveston, Texas in 1948. Retired from American Airlines as a skycap. Have a janitorial service that I've had for the last 33 years that I still operate. Born and raised on an island, it's a completely different atmosphere from big city life. Growing up here in Galveston was great.
Not many people can say that they live on an island in the USA. It's crazy at times, but it's just wonderful. My name is Jonathan Henry. I'm 14 years old. I'm from Galveston, Texas.
Dr. King, whom we honor on this day, stated he desired his legacy to remember him as a drum major for justice.
The people in Galveston are wonderful. The community comes together. So I'm just glad to be here.
Everybody that grew up here in Galveston knows Selena's Blue Room. My very first drag show was here. That was over 20-some years ago. One of the drag queens, her name was she goes by Stickpin, but she had did a song called Clean Up Woman. And she said, hey girl, I need somebody to back me up. So I came out in a long robe with the broom and the little duster and stuff. And I've always wanted to be on stage, you know. That was my very first drag show. I said you won't bag me 'cause you ain't heard, but them are fighting. Well, when I was growing up, this was home. It was public housing. It was built like in a box already around. In the middle, you had like a courtyard in the middle where we played ball at and had a playground and stuff in the middle. People barbecued and holidays and stuff like the Juneteenth, 4th of July, Martin Luther King Day.
Galveston was a place where African Americans could make a better living because of the wharf. The wharf paid more than the average job that African Americans could get in 1937, and my father began to work as a longshoreman. So growing up here was pretty good, you know.
Galveston Island, where the Texas coast begins.
Good evening. We're going to begin directly here tonight with a quote from the National Weather Service in Houston. It reads, persons not heeding evacuation orders will face certain death.
Hurricane Ike made its official landfall right at Galveston, Texas at 2:10 this morning Central Time.
This is a storm to be taken very, very seriously. Now we're getting some new...
Hurricane Ike hit Galveston in 2008 as a Category 3 hurricane.
I haven't been to this place since Ike hit. It's kind of like an eerie feeling because we rode it out in this place.
My wife and I decided, okay, we'll go to Houston. We'll go to her mother's. And we did.
The winds and the rain picked up at around 7:30. As the night went on, the window broke, which caused the wind to rush through the house. And then I took my bed and my headboard of the bed and slid it up against the window. So that kind of like broke the wind, but it was still seeping in. The second half of the storm, the winds were stronger, and everything. The house started shaking then. I didn't notice the house shaking until the second half of the storm, which was really bad. That's when the door flew open. And the wind blew it open. So I had to put all my weight against it. I stood like this for like 15, 20 minutes, scared.
A little bit after the main part of the storm had hit and was on the news, I called my neighbor that lives behind me. I said, well, Lionel, look out your back door, man. Tell me what's going on. So he went to his back door and he looked out and he said, the hood of your truck is underwater. I said, what? So I knew it was bad.
So my arms got tired. So I dropped my hands and I turned around like this and I leaned against the door with my back. So the whole time that I'm leaning against the door, the wind's so strong, it's pushing me.
Galveston is getting pummeled by wind and rain right now. Much of the island is already underwater, and the concern, the unknown right now, is the storm surge.
I think people need to understand what we're talking about here. This isn't rising water. This is a tsunami. This is a surge, a wall of water that's 20 feet high.
The hurricane pushed Gulf water into the Bay of Galveston, and the bay water backed up onto the island. 75% of the island was flooded, which was definitely devastating.
When we finally came back to the island and the neighbors came over, they were like, yeah, your house burned down. Everything that I had, it was gone. It was gone.
It was bad. There were boats on the road. A flood of this nature is unimaginable. My house sits 3 feet up off of the ground. I got probably almost a foot of water inside my house. When you open up the front door and looked into the living room, the sofa, love seat, chair, table, coffee table, rug was all on the north side of the room, as if somebody had just taken something and pushed it all at the same time.
The sign, her original sign, Selena's Blue Room, had broken and had flown in our yard. And that sign had been up there over 40 years.
It's 36 hours after the storm. It is time to let the public see what has happened.
Do you get a sense as to why they're imposing what in essence is a media blackout of what could very well be the worst hit areas from Hurricane Ike?
This was a storm that probably had surge, more likely a Category 4 storm.
FEMA came, and FEMA was going house to house, house to house, house to house. And because they knew that a lot of people stayed. They knew that a lot of elderly people stayed. So they were just going from house to house to seeing if people were alive, if people were dead. There were people died here. People died here. They found people in their houses dead, from drowning. If we would have stayed down here, we would have been dead. Then they declared martial law.
The National Guard had set up in front of the Galveston Housing Authority, where they were distributing water and ice to individuals. And I was in this line like everybody else, and the lady in front of me, she turned around and she said, Leon, I never thought I'd be in a line like this. And she just broke down and started crying.
We had to go to food trucks, the hospitals were closed, and everything was just shut down. But for the first time in my life, I saw the community come together as a whole.
Everybody got together and they bonded and they were asking, do you need help? Do you need somewhere to stay? And there was a bond with everybody, you know. People with money, people without money. We're all equal then.
Pre-Ike, you actually wouldn't have known that Galveston had a racial problem. After Ike, all of public housing was torn down.
Deep down inside, I think they're deterring people from returning. I honestly do. There was a lot of violence with these projects, people getting killed and stuff, and drugs and everything. I think Ike helped them out, big time.
The majority of the bad element left. Now that they've begun to rebuild the public housing in Galveston, that element has not had a chance to be reborn. The racial part of Galveston has been put back in the closet. September 13, 2008, everybody was on a level playing field. Everybody lost a lot, and everybody was in the same boat because it didn't make any difference how much money you had. You couldn't buy groceries, you couldn't buy gas, you couldn't flush your toilet. So we all were even on this island. But as things begin to change, there are still African Americans who haven't had their homes repaired. We're still waiting on the federal government. They're progressing and we're still at a standstill.
You hear scientists talk about like global warming is going to happen and stuff like that, and you don't believe it at first until you actually see something of it.
Before the storm, my view of climate change, I didn't really have a big view about it. I've heard about it. You would hear about it on the news and stuff, and I go, oh well, that's not going to be in my time. I'll be dead and gone by the time, you know, stuff start to act up. You know what I'm saying?
You have to understand that Galveston is an island. In 1967, our beaches was almost a block away from the water. Our beaches now are less than a block from the water.
When Ike hit, it really opened my eyes because it wasn't the wind that destroyed the island, it was the water that destroyed the island. And the water, for some reason, the water that was the highest water we've ever had here.
The more and more the Arctic melts, the more and more water is going to be in the Gulf of Mexico. The more and more water that's in the Gulf of Mexico, Galveston Island is going to have erosion. 100 years from now, Galveston Island may not be here.
I'm just worried for my generation coming up with everything that's going on. I don't want the earth to be in danger.